today we're going to embark on a deep discussion. We're going to talk about the evolving landscape of women in leadership. In this presentation, Karen Ann's going to delve deep into the present and future opportunities that await women leaders, fostering insights that empower you to craft your distinctive role in the leadership landscape. Are you ready to pioneer your path in leadership? Karen Ann will unravel the potential within you and guide you towards a future where your leadership shines. Today, you're going to be part of a transformational conversation that not only explores current challenges, but also reveals the most potent opportunities for women leaders. Our attendees today are going to take away insights into the current state of women in leadership. They're going to learn strategies for leveraging advantages and seizing opportunities. They're going to receive inspiration to carve out a unique leadership role, and you're going to learn practical steps for enhancing your leadership journey. And to guide us in this topic, we are so excited. We have brought in an amazing expert, Karen Ann Bulluck, a leading coach, author, and entrepreneur, inspires successful women to push beyond their limits in leadership, career, and in life. With her daring to transcend model, she guides women to tap into their true selves, achieving audacious outcomes. Known for fearlessness in corporate leadership, Karen Ann brings innovation and change to struggling departments, upgrading technology, redefining processes, and aligning staff. Transitioning to coaching, she leads a movement of women rejecting mainstream expectations for a fully lived life. As a sought-after speaker, Karen Ann inspires with her personal journey to success and energizes audiences with wisdom and intelligence. She also launched her show and her podcast, Daring to Transcend, in 2023, where she discusses the hidden dreams of successful women 40 plus and what it takes to bring them to life. All right, please join me in welcoming our featured speaker, Karen Ann Bulluck.
Thank you, Colleen. Boy, that's an awful lot to cover in an hour. So we'll see what we can do. So just to give you all a sort of layout of how this is going to work, I'm excited to be here today. I'm going to go through a little bit of material, and then I'm going to stop and ask, open it up for conversation, and then I'll go back and do another segment. So I do want to get your thoughts and your insights as we go through. I don't want this just to be me blabbing at you all the time, but I will start by blabbing at you. Just a little bit, not too much. Okay, so I'm going to bring up a slide, and hopefully I can share sound too. And present. So everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, welcome to Daring to Transcend and our discussion today about leadership. Now, Colleen has already given you my whole bio and then some, so I'm not going to go a lot more into who I am, except that I did spend 30 years in corporate. I did retire. Not that I admit to being old enough for that, but I did retire from my 30-year corporate career as an executive vice president and member of the board of directors. So I did climb that proverbial corporate ladder from the ground up. And one day I kind of got to the point in my career where I thought, I knew I was being groomed to get the executive VP title. And there was a big part of me that was really excited. I definitely want this title. I feel like I deserved it after all the work I'd put in, all of that fun stuff. But there was another part of me that was like, I'm not sure this is really what I want to do. I want the title, but I'm not sure I really want the job. So I went on a journey of self-discovery to try to figure out what I really did want to do, how I wanted to take all my leadership and what did I wanted to do with the next phase of my life, which is how I ended up doing coaching and writing. And honestly, I started with the writing piece first because I was an English major in college, despite the fact that I spent most of my career in technology. I was an English major first, so I wanted to write. So I wrote two novels. I'm working on the third, and those are also about women's leadership, though. And I started coaching and speaking and just having a good time. So I'm enjoying this topic. I'm enjoying diving into it, and I hope you will too. So, why are you here? Well, hopefully, you're here to talk about women's leadership because you're interested in either expanding your own, supporting other people, or, just getting more ideas on the topic. So this is an interesting quote. As fast as things are today, they will never be this slow again. Things are just speeding up so quickly. And that includes a lot of changes in leadership. But the problem is even though things are speeding up, there's some things that we are still seeing as women as challenges in the workplace. So I am going to start with where are we now? Kind of what the current state is and what I'm hearing from the women I talk to and seeing and experiencing myself as some of the challenges we're still seeing in the workplace. So ageism. And honestly, from my experience, both men and women experience ageism, particularly after 45 or 50. I think it's more prevalent with women than it is with men. Or at least maybe women worry about it more. But ageism, and especially in corporate America, is really still a big challenge. And then there's we have to pause this first. And then there's the profession expectation, and this is, I think, particularly unique to women, right? So I'm going to play this little clip. It's from the Barbie movie. If you've already seen it, then forgive me. If you haven't seen it, well, maybe this will entice you a little bit. It's short.
Always be extraordinary. But somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women, because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood, but always stand out and always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged, so find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, it's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault.
I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but I know I could when I first saw this. I was like, wow, yes, that's how I felt. I was doing some research a few years ago for an article I was writing, and I found out, and many of the women I talk to say it's even worse than this, but women tend to spend an hour a day, 1 hour a day more on personal grooming than men do. So that's 1 hour a day that we lose, that we basically, making ourselves look young enough, look pretty enough, but not too pretty, all of those things so that we can show up the right way in the workplace. And somehow this never seems to go away. The women that I know in corporate, they tie themselves into knots trying to have the right appearance, look young enough, but not too young, all of those things. So I think that's still going on for us, unfortunately. And then we have the issue, which is honestly one of my passions, is too many women are opting out of the corporate environment. They're escaping the grind. They're saying, I've had enough of the nonsense and crap in the workplace. I'm not going to deal with it anymore. And they're leaving. and they're becoming entrepreneurs, but I know there's a bunch of people on this call that are entrepreneurs, and that is not an easy thing to do either. So we have this issue where the corporate world desperately needs women. They desperately need women leaders, but some of the best and brightest women are opting out because they're tired of it. They're tired of dealing with the nonsense and that perfection expectation and the ageism and all those other things. There's a statistic that really just caught my eye. It was in a McKinsey Lean In study, and it said, for every one woman at the director level who gets promoted up to like the VP level or whatever, there are 2 other women directors who choose to leave the company. Now, whether that's to go to other companies or it's to go out on their own or it's to leave the workforce entirely, this is a really disturbing statement, because we talk about wanting more women at the top and more inclusivity, but if women are, leaving at this rate, that's one of the reasons that there aren't women at the top. Now, I had a conversation with someone, actually, I think it was from McKinsey or it was one of the research companies a few years ago, and I asked her this question. I said, when we're looking at why there aren't more women at the top of corporations, how much does women opting out contribute to that? Of course, her answer was, well, it's negligible. It doesn't at all. And I'm like looking at her, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I know so many women who are opting out. I don't know how you can say that. So it's not even really being acknowledged, even by the women who are doing the research. And then this is another interesting thing. Women typically succeed by following the rules. So I had a conversation not too long ago with a couple of men who are trainers. One of them teaches women how to be real estate investors, and the other one teaches women how to shoot guns. Just saying, in totally different contexts. But both of them said the same thing. They said the women that we train typically do better, succeed more than the men we train. And when we pulled that apart, it was because the women did exactly what they told them to do. They absolutely 100% followed the rules. And they didn't go and create their own rules, which a lot of the men did. So therefore, the women were actually more successful in the short term. In the short term. The problem is, and this is a quote from one of my new favorite songs, called The Road Less Traveled by Lauren Elena, if you listen to country music at all. You won't make a name for yourself if you follow the rules. History gets made when you're acting a fool. The reality is we can only get so far following the rules, and then we need to stop. We really need to stop and make a name for ourselves, to be visible, to stand up, and to rock the boat. And that is something a lot of women leaders, unfortunately, still are not comfortable with. And then we have the big lie. You can do it all. We all know this is a lie. We can do it all. We can have it all. And then people are adding, but not all at once, right? And there's some truth to that, but not all at once. But the other thing is, one of the reasons that this is such a big lie is because women twist themselves into knots trying to do it all and be everything for everybody. And we really can't do that. So women often, dealing with all of that stuff in the workplace, we talked about women opting out, hit the crossroads. I often find this particularly happens for women in their mid to late 40s and early 50s, where they get to the point, and maybe this happens for men too, Jay, I don't know, you can chime in on this, but what does the second half look like? They get to the point, I've had all this success, what happens next? So I'm going to pause for a second here and stop my share. Hopefully I can get back to it. And just invite comments. Have you experienced these things? Is there something else that I missed that you've experienced? Thoughts? Monica.
Recognize everything, which is kind of disturbing. Yeah. I'm on a different continent. Still recognize everything. And I was just thinking about this today, right? I had back when I was in the job, because my bosses always loved me. There were just these few issues, right? We love that you see the big picture, but do you always have to reject the premise, right? All of these things. And I had a boss once tell me, well, can't you just coach your colleagues? I did, but I couldn't tell her that because those people quit.
Mm.
You can't tell your boss that, right?
Yeah, that gets to be a little challenging if you tell your boss I coached the other people and after I coached them, they laughed.
Yeah. And also the whole thing, right? Reward doesn't come to the people that follow the rules. It comes to the people that break the rules.
Yeah.
You can
Eventually,
spend a
yeah.
lifetime following the rules, waiting for reward.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Monica. Susan?
You know, my story. I left the corporate world at the age of 48. And when I did, it was after several, immediate changes between layoffs and changes in corporate structure, things that just had me going, it's time to set my own course.
Mm-hmm.
And many people were going, well, aren't you going to look for a job? Because they automatically think if at that point you were choosing to do something else, you were setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
Instead of accepting the fact that you might be recognizing the fact that you aren't meant to be somebody's employee. You are meant to be your own boss. And I think frequently for women, that isn't expected to be something that we're going to succeed at. And that it becomes that issue of how do you step into your own strength and power and stand for yourself in that and build upon what skills you had in whatever job you were doing to be able to create the new work you want to do. And yes, I think because it does take so much of us to do that, many women sometimes then do revert and go back to a corporate position when they recognize I didn't even realize what I needed and I didn't know who to ask. And we frequently aren't good about asking for help because of that. I need to look like I'm perfect. I need to look like I'm strong enough to do this on my own. And when we are willing to turn to others, be they men or women, to find out where we can get the assistance we need to do what we want to do, that's where we can show up and shine.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great point. I'm not specifically, addressing women's entrepreneurship here, but it does a lot of this stuff,
people don't realize what
goes
it is
back.
to
Yeah.
be in business for themselves. They love doing what they're doing in a corporation and feel as if I can do this outside without understanding that whole big piece of
There's a
running
lot
the
more to it.
business. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jay?
I guess, is my audio on?
Yes, we can hear
Uh,
you.
I guess when I was with Smith Barney, back in the 90s, and I'm now with Mass Mutual Life, but at Smith Barney, the women in the brokerage business, they didn't care. They were just tough enough that they either had connections, whether it was they joined the social groups or they were just guys, girls. They really just fit in almost like a woman sports coach or something.
Mhm.
And they were not inhibited at all. In fact, one of them was pretty fierce, and I was always really careful with her, but she liked me because I was rich. But I mean, I don't think anybody intimidated her in the office, nobody. And that's what I found. So I guess it's an odd sector of the business world, the stock brokerage business, especially when it wasn't called the financial planning business. It was pure, you're a stockbroker at Smith Barney or something, and you're tough, and you were you just you weren't worried about other people's thoughts or anything. You were just going to go about doing your business and hitting the numbers and supporting your family. It was like a one-way train. They were as tough as any of the men, any of them. And
Yeah, no.
I liked them. I was never offended by it at all. I just felt, hooray, they're really cool. That's
Well,
why.
good for you, because a lot of you are a little bit of a rarity, because a lot of men are intimidated by it. So, I mean, that's good for you. And what one thing that's interesting about that is those women, you mentioned that, they sort of became kind of one of the guys to succeed. And that has its own implications as a woman, even in and of itself. And Deborah's nodding her head, so I'm going to invite her to speak.
Well, I mean, it does have perils. Because then, as we have to be beacons for those coming after us, right? Those younger women, they're not interested in being like a guy. And so there's that gap, that gulf, like, okay. And we were criticized, the women that excelled in certain sectors of the corporate arena were criticized for climbing their ladder and cutting the rungs from behind them. Well, part of that is that, so it's disheartening. I will say, I have two examples. One, it's completely unrelated to the corporate world. My dad I was raised on a very humble 100-acre beef cattle farm. 4 kids, we all worked very, very hard. My dad was relaying a story about a year ago, and he's 95, to a person. And he says, yeah, well, when I told the girls, we were the first 2 born, when I told the girls to plow to rake the hay in second gear, they did it. And when I told the boys, younger than us, to rake the field in second gear, they raked it in fourth gear. I was like, holy camole. We spent all that time in the field following his rule, and he was kind of chuckling about it, right? So that was kind of like an interesting aspect. However, I will say, I was in a financial planning firm, retired now from 42 years of practicing boots on the ground, financial planning and asset management. I was in a firm, I started in insurance, which is how you did it in 1978, with all men. I was the only one. Finally, I graduated to this planning firm where there was actually a woman at the head. A woman and a man headed it. And I tell you, I felt 30 pounds lighter the first day I went in an office. I didn't have the sexism completely in my sphere. And there is something about, we don't know the pressures of it until we've escaped it, because why would we know it? Right?
Yeah. What's normal, what's familiar becomes normal, right? And you don't realize there's an alternative until you get some breaking point. So I think that's a funny, that is such a telling story about what your father said, though, because
Right.
it really is telling. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else before we jump on? Continue? All right, so let's stop talking about the negative environment we have now, and let's talk about some of our opportunities, because we do have opportunities, and that's what's really exciting, is where we are now and where the world is now. I feel like there are definitely some specific places where women have advantages that we can take that we can leverage to make the best of this next generation coming up and the next people. So this is really interesting. And again, we talk, I often talk to women, 45 plus. So what's really interesting is there's a lot of articles. This particular quote is from Forbes, is when women hit this stage in their life, they often feel free for the first time to start focusing on themselves and stop serving everyone else.
Right.
And I think that is a pivotal shift in many women's lives, where, Susan at 48, leaving corporation to start her own business. I did it at 55. I know other women who are doing it, but even women that aren't leaving corporate around that time start to say, wait a minute, is this all there is? And how can I make a bigger impact? Because really, at the end of the day, most women that I talk to, women leaders, really want to change. They really want to see changes in the world and have an impact. So here are places where I feel like we can succeed. The one thing is, embracing more diverse leadership styles. I know we're getting away from the command and control, masculine focused leadership style in the world today, but it's still shocking to me how many people I talk to where that 100% still exists. I mean, I've got a client right now who is in one of those environments, and it's just amazing the level of micromanaging and the level of command and control that still is taking place. Women are really, because of our more and I'm not going to say we're more compassionate, because there's a lot of men that are compassionate, and I don't want to, this is not about bashing men, but women are more wired for connectivity, and we're more wired to build relationship than men. It's kind of, if you look at us from an evolutionary standpoint, that's more how we're wired. And so we can create different kinds of leadership styles, even beyond those that are being touted today as, the feminine skills, whatever. I don't think there are quote unquote masculine or feminine skills. I think there are things that we are more wired to do. But we can all do them, and we don't all have to be the same. And I think that's really the beauty of where we're moving into. We don't all have to be the same. We can have different leadership styles, and women are uniquely positioned to start really developing different leadership styles and using them in the workplace. Because we can start breaking those molds as we really tap into ourselves and tap into our identities and our skills and our strengths. We can bring more diverse leadership styles and more diverse thought into the workplace, which again is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about women staying in the corporate world. The other thing I think where women have an opportunity is women tend to be, and again, not male bashing, Jay, because a lot of men are very introspective, but women tend to be more introspective than men. And one of the tools that I use in my coaching program, and for myself, I will confess, I use this totally for myself, is a system called positive intelligence. And it really is a journey to understand myself. And it's a journey to understand how I'm interacting with the world. So one of the real main basic tenets of positive intelligence is that you have to have 3 positive thoughts for every 1 negative thought to be operating at your fullest potential. And that's been shown in studies, not only done by positive intelligence, but by other organizations. So that's not unique to them. But the founding tenet of that is basically to say, to really function at your best, you've got to be in a positive mindset. You have to think positive thoughts. And that means switching out of the fear-based mentality that the world tries to push us into, the news, all media. Everybody is always trying to get us to be afraid, because that triggers our adrenaline and keeps us addicted to it. So we don't. But if we can get out of that fear-based mode, we see so many more possibilities. And we are so much more adaptable and resilient. And I feel like women are much more likely to take that step. And I'm just going to look at the people in my positive intelligence program, and I'm going to say, well, there were certainly men there. The vast majority of them were women. So we are in a position to really influence, because the beautiful thing about when you're in a positive mindset and you can manage your own emotions, your own state of being, you can influence people around you to be more positive too. And that's what I really love about this program, both, for myself and for other people. Obviously, redefining remote work. The pandemic, I don't need to tell you all the statistics about the pandemic and women and all of that stuff. You all know that. But the new world of remote work, again, is someplace where women are uniquely positioned to be more flexible, to be more adaptable, and develop more community. People are desperate for community today. we're so fragmented in our society. And when you do work from home, you're home alone all day. Having community and having that sense of connection to others in the workplace is harder to accomplish with remote work. I don't care what anybody says, it's harder to accomplish than it is when you're in a physical office. But I think women have a really unique opportunity to be the leaders in this field, really to lead the way of how we can really make remote work successful and inclusive and have people feel like they're really part of the team and not just typing away on their computer and seeing people on the screen. So I think this is a really big opportunity for women moving forward because we can be more flexible, we can be more communicative, we can create more connectivity and community that people desperately need. And then there's the whole thing about ethical leadership and sustainability and social responsibility and all those buzzwords that are flying around the world today. And you see corporations talking about them everywhere. But when you really pull back the covers, a lot of them really aren't doing what they're saying they're doing. And again, I think one of the reasons that women are leaving the workplace is because they struggle, especially again in that 45 and over age. They really struggle with the disconnect between their personal values and the values that are being espoused by many organizations today. They want, like a lot of the younger generation, and I think, women, really are in a good position to bridge this between the younger generation who really is very interested in sustainability and social responsibility and all of that stuff, and they get discouraged when the organization that they're working for isn't really walking the talk. I think women are getting discouraged about that too, and I think women in leadership positions today have a unique opportunity to really bridge that gap and really call corporations on, we need to actually do this and not just say we're doing it. We need to, my husband was telling me that he saw a documentary someplace. He's always watching those kinds of things where it talked about certain corporations, and I'm not going to name them because I don't want to throw people under the bus, but that were, all about social responsibility, all about the sustainability, blah, 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 blah. But somebody dug deep down into their supply chain, where they were getting stuff, and they actually were propagating what was more or less slavery in some third world countries, to the point where they were actually encouraging women to not have children and to, take physical steps to prevent having children so that it didn't interrupt their working. But these are American companies who are talking about sustainability and social responsibility. This is what drives people crazy about corporations. This is what drives the younger generation crazy about corporations. And it's, I think, one of the reasons why women are leaving corporations, but we have to stand up. And I think we are in a position to say no to some of this stuff and really start to hold people accountable to doing what they say they're going to do. The last thing I want to talk about is one of the ways that women can do all these things and take advantage of all these opportunities that I just talked about. And that is this whole concept of befriend and tend. So I gotta pull my notes up here really quick because I forget her name all the time. But there is a woman, I saw her speak, oh my gosh, it's probably 10 years ago right now. Her name is Marianne Legato, and she's a doctor. She's a medical doctor. I saw her speak about why women, it was something about why women never forget and men always do. She was talking about the differences between men and women and how they remember. But in her book about this, she talked about the concept of befriend and tend, because she said that when women are under stress And we all know it releases the oxycontin, however you pronounce that. I'm terrible at pronouncing that, into our bodies. And what that does for women in particular, and Jay, I'm sorry about this, but this is unique to women biologically, is that it makes us want to reach out and bond with other women, right? So when we're under stress, a woman's biological impetus is to connect with other women and bond with them. And that's why it's so important for us, and she used this phrase, befriend and tend. It's so important for us to work together as women. Now, I know when I was in the corporate world, and I know talking to other women, there's still a lot of this competition between women where, we don't support each other and help each other as much as we could. I'm encouraged by conversations I'm having with women leaders on my podcast. In fact, I did a podcast interview yesterday with an amazing woman who is in Sweden. And she said, at least in her company in Europe, she is seeing less and less of this competition. In fact, she said it's completely gone. Which is great for her and her organization. I'm not sure that that's true in other places, but I love the fact that it is, hopefully a trend where we are recognizing that really for us to thrive in the world, we need to be connected with one another. And that's one of the reasons that an organization like Leadership Global is so powerful, and having meetings like this is so powerful. And even having Jay, with us, it's great for men to understand this about it too, because it's a little bit different. We're wired a little bit different this way. Men under stress tend to fight, right? They tend to have that, go into fight attack mode when they're really stressed out. I give a talk about risk taking, and when you look at men and women biologically with risk taking, men, when they're under stress, take crazy risks. They go like the opposite extreme. They do nutty stuff, whereas women, when they're under stress, tend to pull back and totally play it safe. So recognizing that doesn't define either sex by that, but recognizing that that's how we're kind of biologically wired to respond, we can, adapt and modify our behavior. And befriending and tending, and I'm having trouble talking today, is one of the ways that we can do that as women. So really, I think leadership in 2024 and beyond is really for women. I mean, there's so many opportunities to work side by side with the men in organizations. If you watch Barbie, you know that Barbie world was completely women, and they realized at the end of the movie that I'm going to give it away, Colleen. I'm sorry, but that's not necessarily cool. It can't be all women. It can't be all men. We really need both to work together. And I think women stepping up and really claiming our power and claiming the things that we're uniquely qualified for will help make the world a better place. So I am gonna pause this for right now. I'm not going to go through. This is a video that's on my website. You can take a look at it at some point where I really talk about what my mission is. But my mission is really to inspire women leaders to rise above the limitations, not only their limitations and the limitations that people are putting on them, but just beyond. Transcend means to rise above everything. One of the reasons that I use Transcend in my brand, and I talk about transcendence, is because of the work that Maslow did. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Most of us think that there were 5 levels. That's what we were taught in school. There are 5 levels, and self-actualization was the top level. But there's actually a 6th level that he added towards the end of his life called self-transcendence or transcendence, where he felt we really had the ability to tap into a greater level of consciousness and have more of an impact on the world around us than just that self-actualization. And I was really inspired by that. And I love the word transcend because it literally just means rise above. And we can rise above. We are totally capable of that. So just a little bit before I open it up for discussion, just do a little bit about what we do here at Daring to Transcend. We are a catalyst for making massive change for corporate women. I do work exclusively with leaders who are visionaries, who are really wanting to lead and innovate and pioneer and thrive in executive roles and in the boardroom. And I work with corporate leaders, I work with businesses and organizations, and do other kinds of advocacy work. Some of the things that I do here, and I'm just gonna put up a couple of testimonials here. I know I'm anxious to get to the discussion, and I'm sure you are too, but I really just am passionate about helping women leaders succeed, and I hope that comes through.